Hello students, today we will be studying part 3 of chapter 4, Network Computing, Discovery, Communication and Collaboration. 4.6, E-Learning, Distance Learning, and Telecommuting. E-Learning versus Distance Learning. There can be some confusion between e-learning and distance learning since they overlap each other. Therefore, we begin with brief definitions. E-learning refers to learning supported by the web. It can be done inside classrooms, as was demonstrated in the Dartmouth College case in Chapter 1. It can be done as a support to conventional teaching, such as when students work on the web at home or in the classroom. It can also be done in virtual classrooms, in which the entire coursework is done online and classes do not meet face-to-face. And then it is a part of distance learning. Distance learning, or DL, refers to situations where teachers and students do not meet face-to-face. It can be done in different ways. The oldest mode was correspondence, where all communication was done by mail. As early as the 1920s, the radio was added to support DL. Then came voice cassettes, videotapes, and TV for delivering lectures. Therefore, e-learning is only one channel of distance learning. So, ibig sabihin nun, mas malawak ang saklaw ng distance learning. Isa lang sa mga pamamaraan ng distance learning ay yung tinatawag nating e-learning. Okay, mas malawak yung tinatawag nating distance learning. At the same time, some parts of e-learning are done in the face-to-face mode and not from a distance. Sa kabilang banda naman, pag sinabi nating e-learning, hindi naman nangangahulugan na distance learning ito. Pwede rin naman tayong mag-e-learning even nasa isang classroom kayo. Kahit face-to-face mode kayo, pwede pa rin kayong mag-e-learning. It doesn't necessarily mean na you are distances between each other. What is common to the two is some of the delivery tools as well as some pedagogical issues. In both cases, web-enabled systems make knowledge accessible to those who need it, when they need it, anytime, anywhere. E-learning and DL can be useful both as an environment for facilitating learning at schools and as an environment for efficient and effective corporate training. The benefits of e-learning. In theory, there are many benefits to e-learning. Self-paced and self-initiated learning has been shown to increase content retention. Online materials offer the opportunity to deliver very current content of high quality, created by content experts, and consistent, presented the same way every time. Students in e-learning situations have the flexibility of learning from any place, at any time, and at their own pace. Finally, some learners in both educational and corporate settings appreciate what they perceive as the risk-free environment offered by e-learning. in which they feel more free to express themselves than in a face-to-face learning setting. In corporate training centers, learning time generally is shorter and more people can be trained due to the faster training time. Virtual universities. The concept of virtual universities, online universities from which students take classes from home or an off-site location via the internet, is expanding rapidly. Hundreds of thousands of students in dozens of countries, from Great Britain to Israel to Thailand, are studying in such institutions. The virtual university concept allows universities to offer classes worldwide. Moreover, we may soon see integrated degrees where students can customize a degree that will best fit their needs by taking courses at different universities. Online corporate training. Like educational institutions, a large number of business organizations are using e-learning on a large scale. Web-based learning technologies allow organizations to keep their employees up to date, and training via the web can run 24 hours per day, every day, or what we call 24/7. Corporate training is often done via the internet and corporate portals. However, in large corporations with multiple sites and for studies from home, the internet is used to access the online material. E-learning is radically changing education and corporate training, and the socio-economic and technological changes should be examined as the learning behaviors and expectations of learners change. There is a sharply growing demand for flexible and adaptive learning environments that are independent of time and geography. Virtual work and telecommuting. Virtual or distributed work environments refer to geographically distributed work teams, global project teams, inter-organizational teams, and non-traditional work environments such as virtual organizations, satellite work centers, and telecommuting. The topic of supporting mobile employees is covered throughout the book. Here we deal with one such virtual work environment, telecommuting. Telecommuting. Telecommuting or teleworking refers to an arrangement whereby employees can work at home, at the customer's premises, in special workplaces, or while traveling, usually using a computer linked to their place of employment. Regular and overnight mail, special messengers, and fax typically have been used to support telecommuting, but they are relatively slow and expensive, and the internet is gradually replacing them. Almost all groupware technologies can be used to support telecommuting. The first telecommuters were typists and bookkeepers who simply used their homes as an office. Today, a growing number of professionals do a significant portion of their work at home or on the road. Impact on individuals and organizations. Telecommuting has a number of potential advantages for employees, employers, and society. For example, the opportunity to work at home helps single parents with young children or other homebound people assume more responsible managerial positions in organizations. However, telecommuting also has some potential disadvantages. The major disadvantages for the employees are increased feelings of isolation, loss of fringe benefits, lower pay, in some cases, no workplace visibility, with in turn the potential of slower promotions and lack of socialization. The major disadvantages to employers are difficulties in supervising work. For how to overcome it, see Fisher and Fisher 2000. Potential data security problems, training costs, and the high cost of equipping and maintaining telecommuters' homes. Companies and employees evidently have decided that the advantages of telecommuting outweigh the disadvantages. The use of telecommuting is on the increase. Some experts predict that in 10 to 15 years, 50% of all work will be done at home, on the road, or at the customer's site. One important advantage of telecommuting, perhaps its key impact, is productivity. Telecommuting and productivity. Why would productivity go up if people work at home? Strangely enough, reduced absenteeism has been cited by many organizations as a reason for increased productivity. Telecommuting also forces managers to manage by results instead of by overseeing. Telecommuting forces both employees and managers to ask some serious questions about the real purpose of a job. Even though many employees are attracted to telecommuting, it is not for everybody and should not be mandatory. Some employees need to work with others, and for those employees, telecommuting may not be an option. Also, not all jobs can be done while telecommuting, and not all managers can participate. 4.7. Some ethical and integration issues. Ethics on the net. Several ethical, legal, and security issues have been raised as a result of the use of electronic networks in general and the internet in particular. For example, does an employer have the right to look at your email without your permission? Is someone's desire to download pornographic images from a news group protected by freedom of speech and privacy laws? Should someone post critical comments about a product, service, or person to a news group? Should an internet access provider be held liable for the content of the traffic on the network? Whenever there are no specific answers to such questions and their legal dimensions are vague, ethics become an important factor. Here we discuss some representative ethical issues. Privacy and ethics in email. The increased use of email raises the question of privacy. While letters are sealed, email material is open, unless encrypted. Many organizations are monitoring email, which they have the legal right to do in most states. This raises questions of invasion of privacy. Other issues include the use of email at work for personal purposes and for sending and receiving material that is not related to work. Right to free speech. The dissemination of information such as pornographic and racist material via email, news groups, electronic bulletin boards, and public networks may offend some people. Copyright. The material you access on the internet may be marked as being in the public domain. In that case, it can be used by anyone for any purpose. Some material is marked as copyrighted, which indicates that you need permission for anything other than a fair use. Fair use refers to use for educational and not for profit activities. The privacy of patients' information. In the United States, several specialized online healthcare networks exist, such as Telemed, a network that tracks tuberculosis patients in order to prescribe the most suitable drugs. These systems could be abused. How do patients know they are getting qualified advice? What if personal medical records fall into the wrong hands? The growth of computerized networks makes medical confidentiality harder to preserve. The problem is how to strike a balance between the benefits of health information systems and their potential ethical problems. Internet manners. It is easy to offend people or tread on their toes when you cannot see their faces or you do not know who they are. Two well-known behaviors on the internet are spamming and flaming. Spamming refers to indiscriminate distribution of messages without consideration for their appropriateness. Spamming is a major problem online. Spamming is frequently answered by flaming, which refers to sending angry messages. The internet can become a war zone between spammers and flamers. Both sides may be equally guilty of ruining news groups. Flamers are known for their attacks on inexperienced visitors to news groups, as well as on those who make spelling errors. There are certain general rules called netiquette or network etiquette governing internet manners. One of these rules, for example, is to think carefully before sending a message. Keep in mind that you are making your reputation internationally through the messages you send out. Another useful rule of internet manners is to apply the golden rule. Do unto others in cyberspace as you would do unto them face to face, which is, of course, as you would want them to do unto you. Likewise, it is far easier to take offense online because online interaction excludes the nuances of body language, rhythm, mood, and context. Email users developed an expressive language that can be used to overcome this problem. Unsolicited advertising. An extension of spamming is the use of junk mail which may clog providers' systems and which frequently annoys people. Monitoring employees' use of the internet. Some companies use special software that monitors time spent on the internet by each employee and by site address. The objective is to eliminate abuse of access during working hours and the accessing of indecent sites. Other companies simply disconnect sites they do not want their employees to visit. Monitoring students' use of the internet. In Chapter 1, we introduced the issue of using a university's network for non-study use. This usage may result in insufficient bandwidth in many universities. Some universities monitor students' activities on the internet. Some students question whether it is ethical for universities to do so. Integration issues. When people discover, communicate, and collaborate by just using the internet or other open systems, there are no problems of doing so. But in many cases, network computing involves other types of networks, such as value-added networks or VANs, as well as legacy and other specialized systems, such as computer-aided design or CAD, or wireless systems. In such a case, users may encounter problems in connecting such systems, a problem known as integration. The problem of integration was ranked by a group of Chief Information Officers or the CIOs surveyed in 2001, 2002, and 2003 as their number one technology problem. On the web, we distinguish three communication modes. Number one, people to people. This was the earliest mode of network communication, when people used email and news groups. They also discovered information on bulletin boards and communicated there. Number two, people to machine. This was the next step, when people conducted discovery on the web, searching and finding information. People and machine to machine. This mode occurs when applications need to talk to applications, either in complete automation or in automation but including people. The integration issue can be complicated since information systems involve not only networks, applications, and people, but also hardware, software devices, and support services of multiple organizations. Managerial issues. Security of communication, number one. Communication via networks raised the issue of the integrity, confidentiality, and security of the data being transferred. Number two, installing digital dashboards. Many companies are installing digital dashboards, which are a sort of one-way portal that is continuously updated with online displays. Control of employee time and activities. To control the time that employees might waste surfing the net during working hours, some companies limit the information that employees have access to or use special monitoring software. Number four, how many portals? A major issue for some companies is how many portals to have. Should there be separate portals for customers, suppliers, employees, for example? Regardless of the answer, it is a good idea to integrate the separate portals. Number five, organizational impacts. Technology-supported communication may have major organizational impacts. Number six, telecommuting. Telecommuting is a compelling venture, but management needs to be careful. Number seven, cost-benefit justification. The technologies described in this chapter do not come free, and many of the benefits are intangible. However, the price of many networking technologies is increasing. Controlling access to and managing the content of the material on an intranet. Number 8. This is becoming a major problem due to the ease of placing material on an intranet and the huge volume of information. And that wraps up study of part 3 of chapter 4, network computing, discovery, communication, and collaboration. Thank you for joining me in our presentation for today. I hope you learned a lot in our lesson. God bless you and may you have a good day.